Today I will show you step by step how to change your UX portfolio so it looks more senior and it will help you attract better work opportunities. We will focus solely on things that you can actually change, like building the narration and presenting your content. Welcome to Design Hangout, a series where we talk all things design. Here is a short disclaimer before we start. Of course, I understand that a big part of becoming a senior designer is the difficulty and the scope of the projects you're working on. But in this video, I would like to help you transform your existing projects so that you can get the most out of the work that you've already done. With that in mind, let's go to the first step. First, let's focus on goals. In many junior designer portfolios, there are either no goals or there is a sole focus on a project goal without any mention of high-level company goals that the project contributed to. In addition, I've seen the structure of a project goal so many times and it's totally backwards. Let's read it out. Create a visual timeline view that allows users to easily add, remove, and change the duration of the time entries. And unfortunately, this statement describes the solution and its capabilities. It is not a project goal. It is a scope of the design phase once we've decided on a solution already. Now let's take a look on how we could redo this section to present it a little bit more like a senior designer would. We need to focus on solving the problems and impacting metrics. And we will continue with the example of the timeline feature project. First, we need to add a company objective. It can be a goal or an OKR depending on what system you're using. And here we have improved time tracking experience across platforms like web, mobile, and desktop. I've also added a specific key result here that we're contributing to. Here it is take 3 steps towards a comprehensive visual tracking solution. And then we can go to the level of our project and present the project goal to improve discoverability and decrease cognitive load when working with time entries. As you can see here, we're taking a step back and instead of describing a solution, we're describing what effect it should have on our users. This leaves us more room for creativity and actually finding a solution that works best. Because maybe a timeline is not the best idea. Maybe we should improve our list view or create a chatbot, who knows. The second step is to focus on key takeaways. The art of creating a good portfolio lies in synthesizing and highlighting only key details, especially when it comes to research, since it's the most information heavy. Let's start with usability testing, and this is a screenshot from my old portfolio that I've pasted here, and I've approached it totally wrong. There's a lot of text at the very beginning, which is not very scannable. Then I've pasted the whole usability testing scenario with all questions and follow-up questions and tasks. This is not really necessary. And then we have turning findings into design changes, and I'm showing the before and after and all the improvements, which is great. But unfortunately, I haven't been annotating the pictures, so basically a reader is left to just look for differences by themselves. You're still watching, so it means that this video is at least a little bit useful, so remember to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I have a lot of videos about portfolio, about using Figma, and getting hired as a UX designer. Thank you. Now moving on to the senior version of the same section. So we're starting with short information about the iterations and the users and how the usability testing was performed. And then we go through the questions and considerations. So we need to answer the question why we wanted to perform the research and what information we were looking for. Then we can show a simple task flow just to give them a taste of how the test looked like. And then we have to immediately go through findings and design improvements because this is the most important part. I think it's very important to combine the issue that you've detected with a solution in this section. I sometimes see people separate issues from the solutions and readers will not be able to connect them that easily during the first read of your portfolio. You need to show not only the improved design, but also the before state so people can compare the two and actually see the difference. It is also really important to annotate your design. So you are pointing out to things that people need to pay attention to so they don't have to guess and compare the two designs for a long time. Overall, it's all about speeding up the process of consumption for the readers and improving the communication. Now let's take a look at another example, presenting user surveys in your portfolio. And junior designers really frequently focus heavily on survey questions and granular answers, so data about every single question. And unfortunately, this is not the way to go because what readers are looking for is what you did with this information and how it influenced your project. And with raw data, they cannot really analyze it that well and can't get to those outcomes. And in a senior designer portfolio, there is a completely different approach. We start with a short introduction about the number of participants, questions, and the main focus of the survey. Then we move on to insights and we present only key numbers that were the most important in the survey in a very easy to read, scannable way. And of course, if you would like to, you can add a link to all your questions from the survey and all the raw data so that people who are really interested can analyze it, but it shouldn't be the main focus in your presentation. And lastly, a really important step, we're highlighting a decision that a team made regarding what the next steps will be in the light of results of the survey. The next area of improvement is how to present visuals, especially high-fidelity design. In one project, you've probably made thousands of decisions and produced tens of mockups, and you need to select which ones are key to understand the solution and put those in your portfolio. In this junior designer portfolio, we see a wall of mockups that people will probably scroll through without much thought. And in this example, the designer is simply not controlling the narration because all of the decisions that they've made about small details will be skipped and omitted because of the volume of the screens that they are presenting. And all the immense effort that they've put into creating those screens will go likely unnoticed. Before we move on, I linked my free 5-day portfolio masterclass below this video. It is an even deeper dive into creating your UX portfolio, how to select projects, how to present them, and how to make your portfolio scannable. Enjoy! In the senior designer portfolio example, we're focusing only on key screens that were really important for the flow and were the most difficult to solve, and there is a highest quality design there. First, we have those item details. You can see a lot of annotations around the design that highlight really important details like quickly adding to cart or fixed button at the bottom. And in the next section, we present the browse and search functionality, also with annotations. The screen on the left shows a list with possible filters at the very top, so the quick filters for the brands. And the screen on the right shows the list with already one filter selected. And the last section is cart and checkout, and we also have here one screen with annotations, for example, a confirmation highlight for the delivery address and the payment method. And after seeing those 4 screens in the senior designer portfolio versus 18 screens in the previous version, we have a way better idea about what the solutions and the challenges were. And the designs I'm showcasing here come from the UI kit created by Abid Akram, and I will link this free resource in the description. And the fourth area I'd like to talk about today is accessibility. In many junior designer portfolios, this topic simply doesn't exist. The designs may be meeting the standards, but calling out this effort explicitly is very rare. Here's an example of how you can use accessibility-related efforts to make your portfolio look more senior. Being aware of the importance of accessibility and showing that you've consciously put effort into it is a great sign of design maturity. The first example that I'm showing here is the navigation bar and how we highlight the active tab versus not active tabs. We add color, fill, and dots so that people who are even not seeing the colors that well can still use our product comfortably. The next section is about the color contrast, and here I'm showing that we are committed to meet the AAA or AA standards for all the texts and graphics in our application. If you would like to, you can also show some examples or, for example, improvements that you've made or difficult use cases. And the last section is the keyboard navigation for a desktop app. And here I'm showing how I've planned switching between different sections and then going through tabs. And this is a proof that I'm thinking about those experiences deeper, and I'm looking for places where I can help our users to move more smoothly through the application. And of course, you don't have to do it for every single screen and product because in many cases, keyboard navigation is simply obvious how the flow goes. But in interesting examples like this one, you can definitely highlight your efforts. And the last step is to define the UX metrics. And in many junior designer portfolios, I see this section as a wrap-up for the portfolio case study, the lessons learned. And of course, it's not a mistake to add the lessons learned section as long as it's meaningful and the lessons learned are not obvious. But in this particular example, we're missing the metrics completely. And we're focusing on lessons learned that are quite obvious, like attention to users' convenience and priority of functional prototypes. And when it comes to the senior portfolio, we will definitely have the measuring the success section. And we can start with displaying the KPIs, so key performance indicators and metrics that we wanted to target with this project. And then if possible, display the results of your project. And showing hard numbers is always the best because it actually shows that you followed up with the results and that your work had actual impact. And of course, before adding anything like this to your portfolio, you need to consult your manager whether it's allowed or not. But you may ask, what should I do with my personal projects, with the example projects that we've created for your portfolio that don't have any numbers or metrics to show for themselves? And it is a valid question. I would recommend limiting yourself only to this first section, where you show the KPIs and metrics that you would track if the project was real and explain why you would pay attention to those particular numbers. The most important thing to show here is that you are aware that you should be tracking some metrics and that you're able to select them depending on what the topic of the project was. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that this video was helpful and that your portfolio will be only getting better and better. I've selected some videos that you might like, so remember to subscribe and I will see you over in the next one.